I tell them to look at something with fresh eyes and to, embrace the newer functionality of Intacct because, and after 3 or 4 years, there's been a lot of new things that have come in. So those that have been on Intacct as long as I have, there's a lot of new stuff. So, let go and don't be scared and embrace the new stuff.
Welcome to the AI in Accounting podcast. Now, here's your host, Joshua Feinberg of Vic.ai.
I am Joshua Feinberg from the AI in Accounting podcast, and I'm being joined today by Sandy McClure from AcctTwo. Welcome, Sandy. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. So we're going to be talking today about Sage Intacct, but before we get into kind of some of the best practices around what you'd recommend for Sage Intacct users, I always like to start out these interviews by understanding what got you to where you are in your current career, how you got started in accounting, how you ended up in your current role at your current firm, how your team fits in with your firm. Can you take our viewers, take our listeners for a few minutes of background to kind of understand the context of the knowledge you're bringing to us today?
Sure. So I am a CPA. I have a master's and bachelor's in accounting. I started out in public accounting at Ernst & Whinney, so one of the big four. I then, after a little bit, I moved into the hospitality industry, and I worked as a consolidation manager for a large private clubs and country club company, and did consolidations of about 500 plus clubs for 5 years. Once my children were born, I took a step back and became a stay-at-home mom, which is a much harder job than any other job I've ever done. But I was a stay-at-home mom, and I started back after my second one was about 3, and I started working at my local church for about 4 hours a week. It grew over 10 years to 35 hours a week. And then we relocated to Charleston, South Carolina in 2010, and I was there for 5 years, and my children graduated high school there. While I was there, I worked for my church, which was a mega church, and we had 14 locations. While I was there, we converted to Intacct, and AcctTwo was my implementer. So that's how I met the AcctTwo group. And then I am a Texas girl. We relocated back to Texas as quick as we could just because I love South Carolina. I love going there to visit. It's absolutely gorgeous, but Mexican food is not there really. And so we moved back to Texas, and when we came back here, the nonprofit group of AcctTwo was based out of Dallas at the time, and that was they were like, don't look for a job, come work for us. So I did that. I have been implementing Sage Intacct mostly in the nonprofit arena for about the last 4.5 years. We have done everything from chiropractic schools to at-risk schools to U.S. Olympic Committee, which is a great one, which was a very fun one, and done a lot of faith-based churches and camps, and so we've done the gamut of the nonprofit area. I've also done several for-profit ones, which are really kind of fun. One was a private college, but they also owned coffee fields in Puerto Rico and coffee shops. So you never know what you're getting into when you get on the other side with the customer. So it's been a really fun situation. I now am the professional services manager at AcctTwo. I have a team behind me that so I am the project manager on any of the nonprofits that come through the door for AcctTwo, as well as some for-profits.
Oh, wow, you have a really diverse background, working
it's been
profits,
fun.
nonprofits, being on the client side for a number of years.
So I was on the nonprofit side, working as well as for profit. So and I mean, when I worked for the company, for the hospitality company, I actually got to play golf free for 5 years. So I mean, I've had some really fun experiences with, with what I've been doing.
So how did you fall into Sage Intacct? Was that when you were implementing for the church? When was the first time Sage Intacct got on your radar screen?
I heard about Sage Intacct in 2012, 2013 is when we first came into it. We actually implemented where I was and went live, I think it was March of 14. And it was it was an easy software to learn. It was an easy software to use, and the credibility behind it was really strong. So I have a very strong moral compass, and I'm not going to work for something that I don't believe in. And after working in the product for 2 years, I have no problem going in and talking to people about it, selling it, implementing it, and knowing that it is a very good product and they stand behind what they do. So
that's great. That's great. It definitely gives some excellent context on how you got to where you are, all the different chapters that led you to your where you are in your current role at AcctTwo, and it sounds like an amazing resource to bring all that to bear with the clients you work with.
Our clients are really fun. I mean, I tell people that, my job now in the implementation is to keep our implementers as well as our customer stress levels down, because it is stressful when you're making a financial reporting change. I've been there. I worked with a consultant on consolidation software when I was working in the hospitality industry. So I've been on both sides of it. So I've seen, how it can feel. And it's real important. One of the things I stress to our implementers is not everybody learns the same. So you've got to take it from different approaches. I've been in implementations where we would draw on the whiteboard 3 or 4 different things. It felt like we were playing Pictionary to a point, But in other ones where if you talk them through it, they have more of a vision from that side of things. So everybody learns differently.
So I think that's a great natural segue to the first product-related question I had for you is, what do you tell somebody who's just getting started with Sage Intacct? What's your favorite tip for complete beginners?
For complete beginners is use the help. There's a ton of help in the product. I tell people when I started in it in 2013, 2014, there wasn't near what there is today. But when I do an implementation, my people will hear probably 4 or 5 times in almost every call, do the help, go to, like if you're on an AP bill page, do help on this page, field by field description. That's what I always go, is help on this page, field by field description. I say that consistently because the explanation is there. If you're willing to take, just a few clicks to get to it, the information's there in the product for you, which is really, really helpful, as opposed to trying to go read through a book or trying to find it, on a 50,000 page PDF.
So this is like contextually relevant help tips that change depending on where you are in the modules? Yes,
absolutely.
Great.
And when you say field by field, it's like on the screen you see date, then you see vendor, then you see, and that's all in the product, and it's got a little description. When you hit field by field, it lines it out for you, walks you through the page, which is amazing.
That's great. So I imagine that saves you from a lot of how-to questions, both with your internal team members and on the client side.
Well, and Sage Intacct does 4 releases a year. Okay, we bring in 4 releases without additional cost to people. So every quarter we bring in a new release. So even our people from the implementer side, when they've brought in something new, it's helpful to go to that, the help page and read through, and that's how we learn it as well. I mean, we've got, because we've got to be up to speed on it to be able to teach it. So we go through that and test in sandboxes and everything to get up to speed. So yeah.
How much lead time do you typically get with that before it rolls out to clients?
We see release notes early. We have Sage Intacct has what they call preview. So about 2 weeks before it gets released, they release it to those of us who've requested preview, and we can go in and play with it. So, but the help isn't always up to date during preview, but it's getting there. So so we get to go in and play though. It's it's helpful.
That's great. So that's for beginners. What about somebody who's at the complete opposite end of the knowledge curve? Like you're at a conference, like the Sage Partner Summit or something, and you're speaking with someone, and they're trying to one up you, and they say, "Oh yeah, well Sandy, let me tell you about the time that," and you're like, "No, wait, this is something that you may not have heard." What's something that power users would be really that would be really helpful for them to know about the Sage Intacct platform?
I think the release notes, because I don't think a lot of them look at it. I think that, going in and looking at the release notes, but also I tell people a lot of times, think outside the box, okay? Try to think of, and that's part of what I really like about my job is no 2 days are the same, because you never know what people are going to present to you. But try to think of ways, try to not make it harder than it has to be. Think about, because a lot of times they'll say, well, this person really needs this information. Okay, well, they may say they want it, but are they really going to use it, first of all? And don't beat your head against the wall if someone's not going to use the information. But two, think outside the box. Think of a easy way to get to the information. There's so many different ways in Intacct to get to the information. Let's look for the easiest way to get there, And believe me, I get hit up a lot at conferences of people going, "Hey, what about?" But that's part of the fun of it. It's almost like a puzzle. How do you fit it together?
So it seems like a lot of times they're asking for features. They have requests, and they haven't really thought through whether they're actually going to use the requests. So it's your job to kind of drill into whether it's worth pursuing in the first place.
Yeah, or it's their job to go back. So, they may say, "Oh, management has always looked at this report." Okay, what are they really using off the report? Does it really need to look this way, or what are the pieces they're using, and how can we get to it a different way, or an easier way, or a more concise way, or can we, with management and with depending on who it is, especially the operational people, they may want to see it in a graph as opposed to seeing a report. And it's presented in a way that, think of the people you're dealing with. Think of what they want to see, okay? Not just how because a lot of people, especially accountants, see things a certain way, and we're very linear. And, but the people we're presenting to, that crowd, and it's different reporting for your auditors, for your banks, for your management people, for your operators, for your, your field people who are going to be out there. I mean, we have a zoo that we did, okay? So your people who are out there doing the speaker chats and things like that with the animals and stuff, if they want to see information financially, how are they going to perceive it, and how they want to drill into it. So I mean, there's a lot of thought behind before you just say, "Oh, this is the way you do it."
So a lot of it comes down to, I guess, contextualizing it for their industry, and probably just as important what their role is.
Yeah, and the people's background. Because if you look at someone's background, then you're going to know how to communicate with them better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What do you see as the biggest mistake that people make in Intacct across the board, right? Regardless of whether they're beginners, they're 3, 4, 5 years, or like in your case, it's 7, 8 years. What's the biggest trap that everyone tends to fall into?
I think it's trying to repeat what they had in their prior system or what they've seen in the past. So I always try to encourage people, I have pray for an epiphany for one thing, think of, try to come up with something creative. I tell them to look at something with fresh eyes and to, embrace the newer functionality of Intacct, because and after 3 or 4 years, there's been a lot of new things that have come in. So those that have been on Intacct as long as I have, that got implemented in the 2013, 2014, 2015, there's a lot of new stuff. So, let go and don't be scared and embrace the new stuff. And, a lot of times people are like very, very comfortable where they are. And so they don't want to do that.
The old pair of sneakers.
It is. It's like these were very, very comfortable, but, I'm going to glue that heel back on just one more time,
Where do you see Intacct going? Where do you see the accounting industry going? Where do you see a company like AcctTwo and Intacct 3 years out, 5 years out?
AcctTwo, we are positioned to continue with Intacct, and we do a lot of managed accounting services. So for people who, everything's going to the cloud. So the whole cloud and open API side of life is our reality. And I will tell you, we've had quite a few of our clients actually come back to us and say, during this time of, when the whole world shut down for a couple of months, the cloud really helped, and the cloud accounting was amazing. And, they would have had their people be at risk if they'd have still been on prem, situation, prem servers and things like that. But there definitely the AI side of life. So Sage Intacct has an annual conference, and every time we get to go to that, we get to see some of the newer stuff that they're looking into. They are rolling out some AI on, like, even as simple as looking at journal entries to show you what looks different. If this, from a consistency, a learning over time, they may have some audit triggers of, hey, this one looks different, you may want to look at it. There's a little guy within, inside of Intacct that, kind of points out those things and looks at different stuff. So the AI side of life is truly coming on. And I'm not sure when it's going to be live in the system, but we keep seeing little teasers when we go to the conferences. That and the other side, back to what do I advise people who are heavy users? Automation. Any automation you can get, because Intacct has an open API. We are consistently getting more what we call marketplace partners that can plug into Intacct. So if they've got like an expense reporting or a purchase, a purchasing program that's on steroids, that they want to plug in with the open API, be open, from a client, be open to that you can have the best. Intacct represents best in class, so you can have the best things plugging into it with that open API. And so we will continue to see more and more and more of that, I think, as we move forward.
It sounds like a lot more AI, a lot more automation, and a lot bigger of an ecosystem as more third-party partners develop tools to get more out of the core functionality of Intacct.
We have tons of marketplace partners currently, but we continually, and the cool part is Intacct vets those for you. So you don't have to question. Intacct goes through a vetting process with the clients and make sure that, that it's, I hesitate to say worthy, but, that it will fit. And we've seen some that haven't made it and some that are great. So
if we think about, if we're fast forwarding the calendar and we're having this conversation again 3 years out, we're going to be talking a lot more about third-party apps, the kind of explosion of the app community ecosystem around Intacct, and there'll be a lot more automation driven, a lot more figuring out anomalies and suggesting things, and much the same way that people have experienced in the last 5 or 10 years on the consumer side, maybe when they get a call from the credit card company that says, hey, Sandy, somebody just bought a $3,000 TV in Seattle. Was that you? Or somebody just bought a $5,000 American Express gift card in Eastern Europe. Is that you? So now it's
Yeah, I will say, unfortunately, I have got some of those calls. I got one that was from Tiffany's, a purchase from Tiffany's on Christmas Eve that on my American Express card that wasn't mine, but yeah. But there is a dashboard, I believe, is going to be in Intacct that's going to be able to have that automation to those triggers to say, hey, go look at this because this looks out of the ordinary. You know, this is not the type of transaction that this user generally puts in. I mean, just things like that are really helpful from a fraud, from an audit, from, you know, all those different protections. I think that's really where we're moving towards, which is going to be helpful to people.
Definitely sounds so. Anything else about Sage Intacct that you think would be especially helpful for our viewers or our listeners to know?
It is a great tool to be able to slice and dice the data. I mean, I love the reporting side of it. I'm very passionate towards compassion towards our clients, and but it is, like I said, my moral compass is high. If I didn't feel like it was a good product, I wouldn't support it. I wouldn't be working in it still. I've worked in, 5 or 6 different accounting softwares, and by far it's the one that I would move to if I had the option of the ones that I've been in before. It's very, very powerful, and especially for the price point that it's in.
Super. Sandy, what's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you if they want to follow the kinds of projects you're working on, or if they have any questions about anything you talked about today?
To get a hold of me?
Yeah.
They can email me at, and you can give my email address out. It's smcclure@AcctTwo.com, and AcctTwo is AcctTwo.com. Any
favorite social media places for people to connect with you or follow you or AcctTwo? Or?
LinkedIn, because I do more on LinkedIn than I do anywhere else. I try to get on Twitter, but I'm not a big Twitter person. But LinkedIn, I get people who reach out to me on LinkedIn quite often. So
awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure we include a link to that in the show notes when this goes up on our blog. But thanks so much for joining me today. This has been super helpful to get an overview of your career, what got you to a place of making you one of the top experts on Sage Intacct, and your experience with getting new users up and running and using the field by field approach to getting help. And how our users should think more about asking what they're really doing, why they're really doing it, who actually needs it. And then just making sure that you're focused on where the future is headed with all this, and understanding the app ecosystem, understanding automation, and the ability to surface more of the data behind what's going on behind the scenes to help you make better decisions. But yes.
Well, the cool part too about Sage or Intacct that I didn't mention is it can grow with a company, and that's the cool part about it. Because in the emerging markets that we're in, and people merge together all the time, it's, it has the ability to grow. You have the ability to add entities and add more to it. So that's amazing.
Like basically investment protection, right? Knowing that they're not going to hit a dead end at a certain place and need to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's great. So thanks again, Sandy, so much. This has been really, really helpful. Super appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the AI in Accounting podcast. To subscribe and leave a review, check us out at blog.vic.ai or wherever you like to consume podcast episodes, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube.